Hello, welcome to 5 ways to streamline software releases on AWS with XebiaLabs. I am James Bland, a Senior Solutions Architect with AWS, and I'm joined with...
Hi, my name is Marco Morales. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with XebiaLabs.
This webinar is broken into 3 sections. The first section is going to cover modernizing your applications on AWS. The second, streamlining DevOps with XebiaLabs, and followed by a XebiaLabs demo. The overall goal of modern application development is to focus on what really differentiates your organization, such as analyzing petabytes of data, delivering video content, or building great mobile apps, and leave the heavy lifting of the underlying technology infrastructure to AWS. This graphic is the innovation flywheel. The takeaway is that for companies to maintain a competitive advantage, they will need to innovate as rapidly as possible, going through the process of experimenting, getting feedback from customers, which then leads to ideas back to experimenting. The flywheel is to show that this is an iterative process that continues over and over again. One of the realizations of modern innovation is that we don't really know what customers want, nor are they able to articulate that very well. Because of this realization, we know it's better to start with a minimum viable product and keep iterating based on customer feedback. Containers have been one of those technologies that's allowed organizations to package applications as code into a single object and quickly deploy the same application to all your different operating environments. Anyone who's ever worked with application development and rolling out releases understands the pain of trying to keep dependencies, applications, and configuration consistent. With containers, you get the exact same object throughout the development pipeline, from build, test, to production. Because of this, you are able to deploy faster knowing that you haven't introduced bugs caused by inconsistent operating environments, such as different OSs, different versions of libraries, and even differences in configuration. Containers also make it easier to move from legacy to modern applications. Most legacy applications can be packaged into a Docker file, which can then be deployed to a container orchestration service such as Amazon ECS or Amazon EKS. This basically gives you a path to modernization without requiring a big bang approach. Here are some of the benefits of containers. You get the ability to define your application as code. Using a framework such as Docker, a developer can package their application and dependencies into a single object that can be ran anywhere containers are supported. It's also easier to manage applications built as microservices, as this allows you to scale and segregate your application into different areas of concern. Doing this also reduces complexity and allows developers to focus on features and functionalities, as well as limiting blast radius of breaking changes. With containers as a single object, testing and deployments become much easier, as there's no longer a series of artifacts. The single object can also be used in all environments, even on a desktop. This reduces the number of variables that change in any given release and makes it easier to troubleshoot if something happens to go wrong. Monitoring is even easier on containers as well, as you don't have to account for the differences in operating environments. One of the tenets of containers is keeping a consistent implementation model going from development, testing, staging, and eventually into production. Additionally, container orchestration services such as Amazon ECS, Amazon EKS have strong integration with Amazon CloudWatch and Amazon X-Ray, which further enables easier monitoring and application level metrics. And lastly, if you think of in traditional environments, IT teams had to patch dependencies in production, and it wasn't unheard of for servers to be missed or patches to be delayed due to untested impacts to the underlying application. Containers enable a much richer security and compliance control by being able to define versions and dependencies within code itself, allowing containers to be tested as part of a CI/CD process. This ensures that container objects has only what has been tested. So AWS has a number of services and features to help organizations transition into modern application development. For registry, we have Amazon ECR, which is a private repository for containers within your account. For orchestration, we have Amazon ECS and Amazon EKS. EKS is a Kubernetes-based service. For compute, we have AWS Fargate, which is a serverless compute service for running containers without having to manage and maintaining the underlying operating system. We have Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, which can be used directly to run containers or through AWS Elastic Beanstalk. That makes it easy to deploy, provision, load balance, scale, and monitor your application. And for networking, we have services such as AWS Cloud Map, which is our cloud resource discovery service, and AWS App Mesh, our service mesh that provides application level networking that makes it easy for services to communicate with each other across multiple types of compute infrastructure. So the traditional style of application development uses a monolithic pattern, which is a linear waterfall approach to software development. Monolithic applications tend to be very complex and difficult to change, which can stall innovation in the development of new features. Additionally, waterfall approaches to software development leave very little to no room for changing requirements and being able to pivot based on customer feedback. As opposed to the modern application development style, which uses a microservice application pattern with an agile approach to software development. Some of the benefits to microservices is that it allows teams to work very rapidly and independently, releasing when they are ready to release as opposed to when all the components are ready. Scaling is done on a per service instead of an entire system, and microservices reduces the blast radius of impacts. When a microservice is unavailable, only that one component is affected, whereas in a monolith, the entire application is impacted. A modern application is about getting features and capabilities quickly into customers' hands. To do that, you need to create feedback loops that quickly get the necessary information back to developers while it's still top of mind. Testing and finding bugs and issues months after the code was originally written is an ineffective way to bake in quality. In most cases, the developer has already forgotten about what they wrote and now has to go through the time-consuming process of hunting down and fixing issues. Getting this information back to developers in a timely manner is important into being nimble and agile. AWS and our partners provide a number of services, features, and functionality to accelerate this feedback loop and get information back to developers while it's still top of mind. Here are some interesting statistics from the 2019 Accelerate State of DevOps report. The comparison is between elite performers versus low performers, where elite performers use a rapid release process with CI/CD, and low performers may not be fully automated or have a lot of manual processes in their pipeline. You can see that high performers benefit with a 7 times lower change failure rate. This is the percentage of changes to production or release to users that result in a degraded service and subsequently required remediation, such as hot fix, rollback, fix forward, or even a patch. We won't read through all of these, but as you can see, companies that are practicing CI/CD gain benefits that allow them to innovate faster and release more consistently. To customers, speed and capabilities matter a lot. The AWS Cloud has the building blocks to streamline your application development lifecycle. We have a robust set of capabilities and features from authentication, authorization, audit and governance, to validation. So with that being said, I'm going to hand this over to Marco, who's going to talk about how XebiaLabs is helping customers transform their organizations from traditional development lifecycles to a modern application with quicker and more frequent iteration and deployments.
Thank you, James. 10 years ago, the world saw its first DevOps days in Belgium, and we've seen amazing advancements since then as we have learned quite a bit. We've also learned how DevOps at an enterprise scale is a real challenge as we've seen organizations struggle in multiple areas. While our webinar today is about the technical aspects of DevOps, we'd like to emphasize that DevOps is also about people, the organization, and your culture. AWS and XebiaLabs are 2 companies to help you succeed in your journey. So why is DevOps hard? The first reason is you have multiple environments to support. Many teams start with on-premise systems and have a deep understanding of their infrastructure. As they migrate to hybrid and cloud-native solutions, they soon discover many more options and possibilities. They can use VMs in the cloud as well as other services such as AWS ECS, EKS, Lambda functions, plus a whole lot more. These services are also evolving and getting better as new capabilities are added all the time. Without careful planning and a good architecture, your team's workload will increase as they try to support these new features. Also, more team members are participating in the entire architecture, including your developer, QA, DevOps, and release engineers. The second reason is you need to scale across your applications and teams. The migration to the cloud also brings the opportunity to deploy more fine-grained applications. Instead of one monolithic application, your teams are deploying large numbers of connected applications. Your challenge includes adapting your applications and your teams to handle the scale. The third item is visibility. More than ever, your stakeholders are demanding visibility. Developers want to know the state of their build test pipeline. Release managers want to know the status of the release. Leaders want to know when features will be in production and the cost of their operations. You have to keep stakeholders up to date and happy. Audits are at the forefront of your activities. Audits aim to show details from your team's diverse toolchain, and the data collection process strikes fear in many teams. This fear exists because people see audits as painful, time-consuming, and expensive. Consider this. How do you collect your data? Enterprise DevOps is hard, especially considering how enterprises have the most stringent requirements from reliability, repeatability, security, and scalability. Your choice of DevOps tools and processes makes a huge difference to your team's productivity and their ability to take on new challenges. We will explore 5 ways XebiaLabs can help your business prepare for common challenges associated with enterprise DevOps. By following these steps, your businesses will be prepared for the challenges ahead. The first way, orchestrate your release pipelines. Don't rely on ad hoc scripting to tie all your DevOps tools together. This one goes to the core of how XebiaLabs helps our customers. We see orchestration and deep integration as key ingredients to build consistent and repeatable release pipelines. It is typical to see teams use 15 to 25 tools in a single release. We share a problem recognized by industry experts. Gartner just released their hype cycle on automation, citing how application release orchestration and DevOps toolchain management are 2 key technologies that are critical for software delivery at scale. When you standardize processes, you enable best practices and scalability. As we get further into the discussion today, we will talk about scale. Ad hoc scripting does not scale. One team builds custom scripts for their individual environment, and another team copies and pastes into their scripts with local modifications. These approaches are difficult to manage. Orchestration through deep integration abstracts the low-level details of each tool, making it easy for even the non-experts in your team to utilize. You just can't have experts in all areas on each team in large organizations. And then there's the ongoing support and maintenance. At XebiaLabs, we build these integrations, and we are here to support them as well. Have your developers develop great new features for your company, not spend time maintaining scripts in your pipeline. Over the years, we've validated what you already know. You have many options for your DevOps tooling. We typically see teams using 10, 20, even 30 different tools in their end-to-end processes. XebiaLabs is here to support you with hundreds of integrations. The second way, include flexibility to deploy anywhere. We live in a multi-cloud world. From Flexera's 2019 State of DevOps, 84% of enterprises are multi-cloud, and 58% are hybrid cloud. This means companies use a blend of on-premise and cloud-based infrastructure. This blend is expected to persist for quite some time, and your strategies need to support these diverse requirements. To be successful in this world, you need to have flexible deployment capabilities. This elegant picture disguises a complicated reality. When we spread our architecture across on-premise and cloud services, our architecture gets more complicated. The on-premise solution may be of a relatively well-understood system, but in the cloud, your team may be running on AWS EC2, ECS, EKS, and more. The shift to Kubernetes adds additional architectural requirements, especially when your teams take advantage of additional services. Your organization will add routing, availability options, multiple regions, and design a cloud architecture favorable to saving on cost. These extra services are really neat, and they make it even more important to be flexible. A common challenge for organizations is finding talent with the expertise to best utilize cloud technologies. This is a critical area where XebiaLabs helps because we simplify those requirements. A little bit of history. In 2009, XebiaLabs started helping organizations with deployment automation. We built the first model-based deployment solution that allowed organizations to eliminate errors and gain much more visibility into the status of their deployments across apps and teams. Today, XebiaLabs DevOps platform manages pipelines and deployments across different combination stacks, including serverless, cloud, containers, running on any platform, physical, virtual, or cloud. Our approach is unique in how we model applications and environments. You use declarative models to announce the types of applications and services you are using. You do not build scripts. XebiaLabs calculates all the steps required to deploy to that environment because we've already figured out the best practice for deployments. What this does is speed up your deployment while reducing errors. You focus on declarations, not scripts. We give you visibility into your application and environments. You take advantage of common flows that do the right thing. We enable self-service deployments while maintaining governance and controls. Your teams are liberated from scripts and can focus on getting real work done. XebiaLabs is here to help no matter what environment or how many environments you choose to use. The third way, leverage best practices to rapidly onboard more apps and teams. This is all about the common struggle of scaling DevOps within your organization. Typically, organizations send their strongest team to solve a problem, and they are very good at developing a working solution and a great pipeline. This may be called a pilot or MVP, and that is next delivered to other teams for duplication. However, downstream teams may struggle because they don't have the same expertise, or their local problem may not rely on the same assumptions or shortcuts. The new teams have to dig in deep to understand how things work and actually to make them work for themselves. The problem to solve is how to best distribute this expertise. What you need is a platform and solution that can make this possible. You want to be able to share methodologies across teams in a usable way, where expertise is not needed. At XebiaLabs, our solution is to use templates. We allow your experts to codify their best practices for sharing with others. You also need to reduce the need for experts so they aren't required on all downstream projects. Our solution is blueprints. This allows your experts to take templates and add team-specific personality or details by asking simple questions. Examples include application name, server name, and so on. Lastly, you need to quickly learn by making it easy to share examples with other teams and get them onboarded faster. When you have templates and blueprints, you start getting DevOps as a service. This is what you end up with for your organization. Your experts help craft blueprints and that use best practices. Your teams leverage these assets by adding their team-specific details. Here are some examples of what we created for AWS. We have pre-built blueprints that show integrations with some of the most common AWS services. These blueprints use a question-driven interface and can be stored on your repository of choice. They also come out of the box with XebiaLabs. Most importantly, these blueprints can be customized to meet the needs of your team. Some examples include the data lake for AWS EC2, a monolithic app running in Amazon ECS, microservices running in EKS, and AWS Lambda. We will show an example of a blueprint with a time reserved at the end for the demo. The fourth way, know everything about every release. Data is currency, and it is a critical element in today's organization in their DevOps endeavors. In your world, you have many DevOps tools, technologies, and environment types. You also have quality, security, and compliance requirements. These integrations are all part of your end-to-end pipelines, and they generate data that is meaningful to your organization. Your challenge is in the question, how do you keep track of all the data? We help you make sense of this data through our orchestration when we tie your tools together and create a consistent and repeatable release pipeline. When we incorporate all the steps from planning to production, it is easy to provide powerful insight into your software process to help your organization deliver better software faster with greater security because you can make data-driven driven decisions. A great example of how we can help organizations is using data from our software chain of custody capability. In legal circles, the chain of custody for a piece of evidence proves that evidence was handled properly and with discipline. The software chain of custody provides the same assurance about everything that happens in your software delivery pipeline. It can prove what happened, where, when, how it happened, and who was involved. We show this evidence because we're plumbed into your tool chain and have deep insight into your processes. Without this information, organizations are wasting resources. DevOps teams sacrifice thousands of hours a year to meet audit requirements to create reports. Teams dig through log files and manually piece together an incomplete picture of what happened across dozens of tools. They are wasting time. Enterprises spend a ton of money and time creating audit reports. DevOps teams hate doing them. And the end results don't often meet the need, and you have to redo some work. Instead, XebiaLabs now provides organizations the first push-button audit report that can be generated when you need it without the necessary firestorms of the past. In our demonstrations, we will show the audit report and how it provides insight into your end-to-end pipeline, the phases, the individual tasks to meet the needs of your stakeholders. The fifth way, it's all about continuous improvement. This is a natural follow-on to the collection and unification of data. You will need to be able to identify errors and bottlenecks in your releases and processes. You need to make improvements using this information and be able to repeat. XebiaLabs provides DevOps data for everyone so they can make informed data-driven decisions. Release managers and application teams know where to focus their efforts for continuous improvement. Compliance, security, and audit groups, finally, all the data needed to paint a complete picture of what happened in a release is readily available and in a convenient format. For leaders, CIOs, and directors, full visibility across your entire software factory. You know where your money is going, you see where their bottlenecks are, and you can guarantee compliance. Let's review how the full XebiaLabs DevOps platform helps your business prepare for enterprise DevOps by making things easy. We orchestrate your end-to-end pipeline across your diverse DevOps toolchain. We make it easy for your teams to perform repeatable deployments. We gather data to give you unprecedented insight into your activities, and this is the XebiaLabs platform. The XebiaLabs DevOps platform is available in multiple formats on AWS. We are available in the marketplace. You are free to provision infrastructure on your own instances. And we also provide an AWS Quick Start to give you a highly available installation. XebiaLabs provides support for commonly used AWS services through our AWS plugins. Here are a few examples. We are continually adding support for more and more services as AWS continues with their innovation. Now it's time for our demo. Let's start the first of two demonstrations. In this demonstration, we're going to show an end-to-end orchestration. First, let's start by logging on to Excel Release. When we're logged on, we get a nice representation of ongoing release activities. And the design is meant to show you all the details you would need to know about your current releases. From here, we're going to dig into the actual design part to see how we construct a template. We give people the ability to organize their templates in a folder structure on the left. And we're going to click into this lift and shift example and show you the template that we generated for the demonstration purposes of this webinar. The one we're going to look at is the one entitled Lift and Shift Advanced Version 2, and it's going to be an end-to-end pipeline that includes a number of common tasks. This is the definition where we organize our pipeline into vertical columns of phases for your pipeline. The rectangles represent the task, and it's all driven from our plugin architecture. As your teams bring in their integrations and use our plugins, they get to add these rectangles or tasks to do the work for them. Here we're going to click into the act of adding a task to give you a glimpse of some of the options available to your teams so they can add integrations. The experience for them is pretty much pick and choose. The data entry is going to be declarative, where we announce what we're working with, the ticket, the title, and so on. And the whole system is designed this way. We're going to start running the release, give it a nice name like AWS Demo, And we're going to add a tag, which is going to work to our advantage to help us filter out data. We'll create the release and then start it, and then we'll see evidence of different tasks running as they run. So in this cycle, we're going to create some tickets in Jira and ServiceNow. We're going to send notifications in Slack, and we're going to ask for questions along the way and show other examples. Here is evidence of us showing a Slack notification for those teams that like to be told what's going on. We'll come back here and show an example of an inline approval process or a gate where a person's asked to maybe do some work, and when they're done, they can click back. This is very common in DevOps environments where people have to say, yes, I can verify that I've seen some work. So here are the ideas. Someone's going to make a change, and they'll give their approval, and that will allow the release to continue. We've pre-built the code, so we're not going to build it this time. And once we are done, we do some things that are common, like run a SonarQube compliance check, as well as a Fortify check compliance. Common activities plumbed right in, and they move as fast as those operations go. Once we're done with those code analysis, we start the process of deploying. And in our world for development, we're going to work with a Docker environment, which is something that is favored by developers. We provision the environment, and then we're going to use the environment. We'll do a quick scan and see what the deployment operation works. Here's an example of how we use our rules-based engine, your declaration, to do the right thing. Your team did not script one thing. We are automatically figuring out what to do to deploy some software into Docker containers. And when we move on to the next step, we're going to be asked to do a human-in-the-loop verification of the endpoint. And we're going to provide the person with a URL. So click on the URL. They'll be able to see that, yes, the application is up and running. We're really happy. And we can come back and maybe, use this as an example of where people would do some human testing or user testing. Mark it complete and give a positive success value and continue with the story. We're providing real-time updates to Jira and ServiceNow automatically and continuing with the notifications to the team in Slack. Behind the scenes, we're going to do an undeploy and deprovisioning because we're done with our infrastructure. In the meantime, while that's happening, I want to show you an example of some dashboards that we include. And the plugin architecture allows us to bring in these different tiles where we're showing here Fortify and Blackduck, popular tools for security. Your teams can use any of our plugins with their tiles to drag and drop the view that they want. Another example is going to be here with SonarQube and Jira, where we give people the information that is of interest to them. And it's very powerful because it means it's all in one environment. We are also paying attention to all the data that's being gathered, and we'll show you those results in a future part of this demonstration. Let's go back to our demonstration, which is running. We'll be now deploying to the dev test environment, and we're asked the question, are we ready to go? Here, a person like a release admin might say, yes, let's go ahead and continue with the operation. We'll give the approval. And when we're done with that, what's going to happen next is we're going to provision software services in AWS and then deploy to them. We have a pretty good understanding of what it takes to create and destroy services on AWS. And here we'll show some examples of how we're going to be doing the right thing and delivering these containers now to different Amazon services. You can see the evidence with the names, how we're creating different things in our cloud with different types of services. You can see words like subnet and security group and gateways. You know those are important for your operations, and we're taking care of those things for you. We'll go back as soon as this deployment's done and see the next steps in our release pipeline as we see the evidence working there. Again, the value to your team is you focus more on declaring the software and the endpoints. You're not working through the logic, the scripts, to figure out what is the right sequence to create these services and use them. When we're done with that deployment, we run into some necessary tests. We have a brand new environment. These will succeed. And as soon as we're done and we make some runtime updates to the system with an approval and Jira and ServiceNow, we'll go ahead and deprovision and undeploy the software so that we know where we are with our environment. This is a nicely automated system. in the absence of an orchestration tool, you'll have many teams working hands-on, and you will also lose quite a bit of information knowing if anything happens to change along the way. We'll let the scan work, we'll let the undeploy begin, and then we'll switch over to a different view while the rest of the release continues in the background. So from here, we're going to look at our global dashboards. We are collecting data on the entire system. And when we do this, we provide a lot of details to help people save on time. Time is a huge driver for people. So we have different representations of efficiency, of time. Where am I spending my most time in either a release, a phase, or a task? What are my percentages? These all help teams do the right part where they can optimize their solution. Looks like we're still in the middle of an undeployment process. When it's done, we'll finish up the solution. And when we're done, we'll do a quick deployment to a production environment, which happens to be on other infrastructure. And this is meant to complete the picture of us having a hybrid cloud solution. We won't go into the details of the production environment because it's a little bit more the same, but you can rest assured that X-Release is able to handle Docker, AWS, and data center updates as you would expect. Another thing we want to show is the software chain of custody. It's available in individual and group level reports for releases. But when people grab these spreadsheets as evidence of what happened, they get to see a lot of detail that we've already described in some of the earlier discussions. We see the who, what, where, when details of the release, and this helps your stakeholders see all the information for dates and times, any kind of overrides, anytime we skip things, those are all available at the release, at the phase, at the task level. Other things we do is because we have a deep understanding of all the details when we show the dates and times and outcomes, is we also put things into categories as your teams would want to see. So if they want to see things along planning, or if they want to see things along security or deployments, those different categories are really easy for us because we have a good understanding. And this helps those teams quickly glance and say, I can see how many deployments we've done during this release, and I can see the details behind each of the tasks to very minute details to give me high quality confidence that we're doing the right thing. In this next demo, we're going to show an example of a blueprint. We've already talked about how with blueprints, your experts can codify their expertise so that other people can use it. And it starts at a command line. We type in the Excel blueprint, and people are given a menu of choices. Here are blueprints I can use to help my team onboard. The question and answer section is designed by the experts or by the leads to give the user only the information they have to provide. I want to give it a name of EKS Intermediate, and the rest of the information as you scan, you'll see we'll be asked for credentials, we'll be asked for version numbers, and instance types. The idea is someone's already figured out what do we need to ask people? What do we need from each individual person or team so that we can give them a ready-built template with their right data or personality? So here we see we've given a name of a cluster, we're picking a version of EKS, and how many nodes we want. Other things we're going to show are the size of the instances. You can limit if your team knows that we want to use a certain size or style of service. You just specify it and don't give them a choice for other things. We'll create the blueprints. The operation is very quick, as fast as you see here, and then we'll import these definitions so that we can see the results in Excel deploy and Excel release. Below, we're running the operation to apply the example, and we'll switch over to both Excel deploy and Excel release to see the results. So we're done. From here, we'll move over to Excel deploy. You see on the left, you see evidence of the application environment and infrastructure models have been rendered with the details, with the declarative models, and your teams are ready to use it. Where they're actually using the Excel release, where we've created an onboarding and offboarding set of pipelines to create and destroy your infrastructure in a nice way. If we click into the creation pipeline, you'll see the examples where we do the provisioning and later we do the delivery of the software into the environment. And this is greatly reducing the amount of time. If we run this more in the same way as we did in the first release from the first demo, we instantiate it and we run it, and now your team's ready to run. Thank you all very much for attending today's webinar. Once again, this is Marco Morales, Senior Solutions Architect at XebiaLabs.
And this is James Bland, Senior Solutions Architect with AWS. And once again, thank you. And this concludes our webinar.